My mother introduced me to her friends as the other one for so long that I started to believe that was my actual name. Not her daughter, not even her firstborn, just the other one, the one who wasn't my brother. His name is Colton. 4 years younger than me, and somehow from the moment he was born, he became the entire gravitational center of our family. I don't say that with bitterness anymore. I've done enough therapy to say it plainly, the way you'd describe weather. It was just how things were in our house. My father coached his little league teams. My mother drove 2 hours every weekend to watch his high school soccer games. When Colton got into Penn State, my parents threw a catered backyard party with a banner that said Penn State, bound in blue and white. When I got into the same school 2 years earlier, full academic scholarship, my mother said, "Oh, that's great, honey," and went back to watching TV. I learned early on not to need the applause. Growing up in a suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio, we were comfortable, but not wealthy. My father worked in commercial insurance, my mother managed a dental office. Colton was charismatic, easy, the kind of kid teachers remembered. I was quieter, good grades that nobody asked about, science fairs that nobody came to. I remember standing at the display board I'd spent 3 weekends building, a study on soil erosion near the creek behind our neighborhood, and looking out at the gymnasium full of parents, not finding either of mine. My science teacher, Mrs. Pearson, stood next to me for a minute. She didn't say anything. She just handed me a blue ribbon and squeezed my shoulder, and somehow that made it worse. I went to Penn State for environmental engineering, graduated with honors, got a job with a civil engineering consultancy in Philadelphia right out of school. I was 22, paying my own rent, managing my own student loans, building something quietly and entirely on my own. I didn't ask for help. I had learned that asking didn't get you anywhere, not in our family. Colton, meanwhile, joined my father's insurance firm after graduation. My father made him junior account manager within 8 months. "He's got the instincts," my father told extended family at Christmas dinner that year. I was sitting right there. I had just closed a stormwater infrastructure project for a city in New Jersey, my name on the report, my design in the ground. Nobody asked. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because you need to understand the texture of it. The way being invisible in your own family isn't one big dramatic moment. It's 1,000 small ones. It's the holiday photo where you're cropped to the edge. It's the group text where news about Colton gets 15 replies and something you share gets 2. It's your birthday dinner being at a restaurant everyone else chose, the cake your mother picked up being your brother's favorite flavor, because she forgot you don't like lemon. By the time I was 26, I had left the consultancy and started working on something I'd been thinking about for 2 years. Environmental compliance is a mess for mid-sized construction companies, not the big players. They have in-house teams, legal departments, whole divisions. But the companies doing regional commercial builds, school renovations, municipal contracts, they were constantly getting fined, losing bids, or holding up projects because they didn't have anyone who understood EPA permit requirements, stormwater management plans, or wetland impact assessments. I knew that world. I had lived in it for 4 years. So I built a platform, software essentially, that walked project managers through compliance workflows, flagged permit deadlines, generated the documentation their teams needed. I did it quietly. I freelanced on the side while I built the product, tested it with a small construction firm in Allentown who became my first paying client, then 2 more in central Pennsylvania. I incorporated as Verdant Compliance Solutions. I did not tell my family. Not because I was ashamed, because I had stopped expecting them to care. By my 29th birthday, I had 11 clients and was turning a profit. By 29, I had brought on 2 full-time employees and was managing contracts in 4 states. I moved from Philadelphia to a 2-bedroom condo in Rittenhouse Square. I still called home for major holidays. I sat at the table and listened to updates about Colton's accounts, Colton's promotion, Colton's new truck. I nodded. I ate my food. I drove home. My mother called me in October of last year. That itself was unusual. She usually texted, brief and practical. She called to tell me that Colton was engaged. His girlfriend's name was Priya. They had been together for about 2 years. I had met her once briefly at Easter, and she had seemed smart and warm. I was genuinely happy for him. "We're doing an engagement dinner in December," my mother said. At the club, the country club they had joined 6 years ago, the membership my father treated as evidence of something, though I was never sure what. "We'd like you there." I noticed the phrasing. Not "we want you there." Not "it wouldn't be the same without you." "We'd like you there," the way you'd invite an acquaintance whose absence would look strange in photos. I said I would come. I drove down to Columbus on the Friday before the dinner, stayed at a hotel instead of the house. I had started doing that 2 years earlier, and it had been the right decision. My own space, my own morning. I could exist in that city without being absorbed back into the version of myself that grew up in that house. The dinner was Saturday evening. I got dressed in my hotel room, a dark green wrap dress I had bought specifically for this, heels, the pearl earrings my college roommate had given me when I closed my first real client. I looked at myself in the mirror and I felt fine. Grounded. I had gotten good at that. I was not going there to prove anything. I was going to have dinner, celebrate my brother's engagement to a woman who seemed lovely, and drive home Sunday. The club dining room was exactly what you'd expect. Dark wood paneling, soft lighting, tables with actual linen, the kind of place that made you speak quietly without anyone asking you to. My parents were already there with Colton and Priya when I arrived. There were also several of my parents' friends, people I recognized from childhood, the Harmons, the Becks, a woman named Gloria who my mother played tennis with, and a handful of Colton's friends from college and his office, about 20 people total. My mother hugged me at the door, with that hug she does, the kind where her arms are there, but her weight is already pulling away. "You made it," she said, as though there had been some doubt. My father shook my hand. Colton grabbed me in a real hug, the kind he'd been giving since he was small and that I had always been grateful for. Whatever my parents had made of us, Colton and I had managed something real between us. Not close exactly, but not broken. Priya hugged me too. "I'm so glad you came," she said, and she looked at me when she said it, which mattered. I was seated at the far end of the table. Not the very end. There was one more seat beyond mine, but far enough that I was outside the easy orbit of the main conversation. My parents were in the center, Colton and Priya beside them. The Harmons, who had known my parents for 20 years, placed directly across. I was between one of Colton's college friends who I had never met and Gloria, the tennis friend who spent most of dinner telling me about her recent knee replacement. I didn't say anything about where I was sitting. I ordered the salmon. I asked Gloria follow-up questions about her physical therapy. I was fine. It was around the main course when my mother stood briefly to say a few words. She talked about Colton growing up, the soccer, the work ethic, how proud she and my father were. She talked about Priya joining the family. She said she couldn't imagine a better match for her son. She sat down to warm applause. She did not mention me. I looked down at my plate. I cut a piece of salmon. Colton caught my eye from across the table and gave me a small, apologetic look. The look he'd been giving me our whole lives, the silent acknowledgement that he saw what was happening and didn't know how to stop it. I gave him a small nod back. It was its own language, one we'd developed out of necessity. Priya was sitting next to my mother. I watched her lean in and say something quietly. My mother smiled and waved a hand, the way she did when she was dismissing something. The dessert course arrived, individual chocolate lava cakes, and the table got quieter, the way tables do after wine and the long meal. Colton's friend on my left had turned to talk to someone else. Gloria was examining her dessert spoon. That's when Priya said across the table clearly with genuine curiosity, "So, your company, tell me about it." I looked up. She was looking directly at me. "I heard you started something in environmental compliance," she said. "Like a software platform?" The table didn't go quiet immediately. It took a few seconds, but it went quiet. "Yeah," I said. I kept my voice even. "About 4 years ago, we work with mid-size construction companies on EPA compliance and permit management, mostly mid-Atlantic, but we've expanded into the Southeast this year." Priya tilted her head. "What's the name of the company?" "Verdant Compliance Solutions." Something crossed her face. She set down her fork. "Wait," she said. "Verdant. The Verdant that published the stormwater compliance white paper last spring?" The one that got cited in the AGC newsletter? The Associated General Contractors newsletter. I had not expected anyone at this table to know what that was. That was us, I said. I wrote most of it. Priya put her hand over her mouth for a second. Not dramatically. Just the gesture of someone recalibrating. I work in construction finance, she said. I've been following that white paper. I forwarded it to 3 clients. She looked at Colton. She's the one who wrote that. Colton blinked. What? Our compliance director referenced Verdant at a conference last month, Priya said. She looked back at me. How many states are you operating in now? 7, I said. We're in contract negotiations with the municipal authority in Texas right now, which would open up a new region. My mother had gone still, not the comfortable still of someone listening politely. The other kind, the kind where the face doesn't quite know what arrangement to make. My father put down his wine glass. You're building that in Philadelphia? He asked. He said it carefully, like he was testing whether the sentence was real. Yes, I said. I incorporated 4 years ago. I have 6 employees now. 6, he repeated. One of the Harmons, the husband, a contractor himself, leaned forward. What kind of revenue are you doing, if you don't mind me asking? I did mind, a little. But I also recognized it as a real question from someone who understood what the number meant. We crossed 7 figures last year, I said. We're tracking to grow about 40% this year. The table was quiet in the specific way that tells you everyone is listening, but nobody wants to be seen listening. Priya shook her head slowly. I had no idea, she said, and I could hear that she meant it as something more than small talk. She looked at my mother. Did you know she was doing this? My mother opened her mouth, closed it. She mentioned she was working on something, she said finally. I had never mentioned it, not once. Colton was looking at me differently than he had an hour ago. Not with pity, with something else. Something that looked like shame, and also like recognition, and also like the beginning of a question he had been not asking for a long time. You've been doing this for 4 years, he said. It wasn't really directed at me. It was directed at the air in front of him. 4.5, I said. Gloria touched my arm. I had no idea you were so accomplished, she said warmly, and under any other circumstances I might have found that condescending. Tonight I just smiled. My father picked up his wineglass again and swirled it without drinking. He was the man who had described my brother's 8-month promotion as evidence of instinct. He was the man who had never once asked about my work. I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that, because I think people expect you to feel triumphant. What I felt was tired, and also something quieter, a kind of settling, like a house after the wind stops. The dinner ended the way dinners do. People gathered coats, said goodbye in the foyer. My mother hugged me again at the door, and this time her weight was there. I noticed it. I didn't make anything of it. Colton walked me to my car. We stood in the parking lot for a minute. It was December and cold, the kind of dry Ohio cold that gets behind your ears. I didn't know, he said. I know you didn't. Why didn't you tell us? I thought about how to answer that honestly. When have I ever told you something and had it matter? I said. Not harshly, just factually. He didn't say anything for a while. The parking lot lights hummed. That's not fair, he said finally, and I could tell he was talking to himself as much as me. It's not about fair, I said. I stopped needing it to be fair a long time ago. I just built the thing. He nodded slowly. I could see him turning it over. Priya's going to want to talk to you about a potential client referral, he said. She was serious. I smiled. Tell her to email me. I drove back to the hotel with the heat on high and the radio off. I thought about my science fair project, the blue ribbon. Mrs. Pearson's hand on my shoulder. All the dinners and holidays and phone calls where I had been present in body and absent in every other way that counted. I thought about the condo I had bought with my own money and a city I had chosen, surrounded by a team of people who showed up every morning because they believed in what we were building. I thought about my mother's face when Priya said my name like it meant something. The next morning I drove home. I called my best friend from college on the way, a woman named Bex who had been listening to this family story for a decade. I told her what happened. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "So how do you feel?" I thought about it. The road stretched flat and gray ahead of me, past the flat fields of central Ohio, past the exit where I had grown up. I feel like I've been carrying something for a long time, I said, and last night it just put itself down. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I turned up the radio. I drove east toward my life. I keep thinking about that parking lot. The humming lights, the December cold, my brother standing there with his hands in his pockets saying, "I didn't know," and meaning it. And I believe him. That's the part that used to break something in me, but doesn't anymore. He genuinely didn't know because I had stopped telling people. Not out of secrecy, out of self-preservation. When you grow up learning that what you do doesn't register, you eventually stop announcing it. You just do the work. You keep your head down and you build. I've thought a lot about what it actually takes to get from that science fair gymnasium, standing alone next to a display board nobody came to see, to a 7-figure company in a city you chose for yourself. And I don't think it's one thing. I think it's 3 things, working together so quietly you don't even notice them until you look back. The first is knowing what you actually believe, not what you were told to believe about yourself. Not the version your family reflected back at you, but what you know to be true when you're honest. I knew I was capable. Not in an arrogant way. I had plenty of self-doubt, plenty of nights wondering if the whole thing was a mistake. But underneath the doubt there was something steady, something that said, this is worth doing, and you are the right person to do it. That steadiness is what I'd call integrity. Not the word people use in corporate mission statements, the actual thing. The alignment between what you know and what you do. My parents never gave me that. I had to build it myself, and that might be the most valuable thing I own. The second is thinking clearly, not just being smart. I've met plenty of smart people who talk themselves in circles. I mean the ability to look at a real problem, understand it without flinching, and figure out what's actually needed. The construction compliance space was broken in a specific way. I could see it because I had worked inside it. I didn't need someone to validate the observation. I just needed to trust my own read of what was there. That trust in your own analysis, your own judgment, your own conclusions, is something you develop by using it. Every time I made a decision based on my own thinking and it turned out to be right, it got a little easier to trust the next one. The third is the one nobody talks about enough because it isn't glamorous. It's just continuing, not pushing through some dramatic obstacle in a single heroic moment. Just continuing on a regular Tuesday when nothing is going your way and nobody is watching and there is no applause coming. I freelanced nights and weekends for 2 years while I built the platform. I had no co-founder, no investor, no one sending encouraging emails. I continued because the alternative was to stop, and stopping felt like letting the wrong version of the story be the final one. Priya didn't change my life that night at the club. My life had already changed. I had changed it. Slowly, over years, in a city 4 hours away while my family talked about my brother over dinner. What she did was make visible something that had been true for a long time. And maybe that's the real thing I want to say. You don't need to be seen to be real. The work is real whether or not anyone in that dining room knows about it. Build it anyway. The room will catch up eventually.